Retirement is not a permanent vacation. Retirement is a state of unemployment that lasts for 30 years with no possibility of being rehired. That is the only definition that matters. For the first time in your life, the supply ship has stopped coming. There is no paycheck hitting your account on the 15th. You are alone in a small boat in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and the supplies you have on board right now are all you will ever have. And here is the terrifying math that no financial advisor tells you. You have no idea how long this voyage will last. This brings us to the first brutal lesson, the longevity risk. In 1950, the system was designed for you to retire at 65 and die at 68. The math worked. But today, if you are a healthy 65-year-old, there is a high probability you will live to 90 or 95. That is not a phase. That is a second adult life. Imagine I hand you a pile of cash when you are 30 and say, make this last until you are 60. You cannot work. You cannot earn a dime. And by the way, the cost of food might triple. You would be terrified. You would be rationing every crumb. Yet retirees today treat their nest egg like a lottery win. They buy the boat. They renovate the kitchen. They fund their adult children. They are stealing money from their 85-year-old selves who will be too frail to work and too broke to survive. You must understand one fundamental shift in physics. When you retire, you go from being anti-fragile to extremely fragile. When you work, you can fight inflation by asking for a raise. You can fight a market crash by working longer. You have options. Once you retire, you are a fixed target. Inflation attacks you, and you have no pricing power. The stock market attacks you. And you cannot wait for a recovery because you need to sell assets to eat. Medical bills attack you, and they don't care about your budget. Forget the golden years. That term was invented by real estate developers to sell condos in Arizona. This is not a holiday. This is a survival mission. In this video, we are going to dismantle the 10 most dangerous myths about retirement. We are going to look at the math of survival, the human predators waiting to bleed you dry, and the psychological war you will fight against your own boredom. If you want to survive the next 30 years with your dignity intact, listen closely. Lesson number 1 starts now. Welcome to the minefield. Most people think retirement planning is just about hitting a number. They say, Warren, if I save $1 million, I am set, right? Wrong. The number in your account is meaningless. What matters is the physics of how that money interacts with the brutal reality of the economy over a 30-year period. We are now entering part 2, the financial minefield. In this section, we are going to walk through the 3 mathematical monsters that are waiting to eat your savings alive. Lesson number 1, the inflation monster. You think you know what inflation is. You read the news and they tell you CPI is 3%. You think, okay, I can handle 3%. Let me tell you the brutal truth. The inflation rate you see on TV is not your inflation rate. The Consumer Price Index is a basket of goods for the average worker. It includes cheap electronics, toys, and fast fashion. But as a retiree, you are not buying PlayStations. You are buying healthcare. You are buying services. You are buying labor. The inflation rate for the things seniors actually need is often double or triple the official rate. Let's look at the math. If official inflation is 3%, your money loses half its value in 24 years. But if your personal inflation rate is 6%, which is very realistic if you have chronic health issues, your purchasing power is cut in half in just 12 years. That means if you retire at 65 with $10,000 a month in purchasing power, by the time you are 77, you are living on the equivalent of $5,000. By the time you are 89, you are living on $2,500. You haven't lost a single dime in the stock market. Yet you are now living in poverty. This is the silent thief. It doesn't break into your house. It just slowly shrinks the house around you. I often say cash is trash. In retirement, cash is not just trash, it is a melting ice cube. If you keep your nest egg in a safe savings account, earning 2%, while your cost of living rises by 5%, you are mathematically guaranteed to go broke. You are bleeding to death, but it is happening so slowly, you don't feel the pain until you try to pay a bill and realize you can't. So the lesson is this: you cannot hide in safety. To survive 30 years of inflation, you must own productive assets. You must own businesses that can raise their prices. You must stay in the game, even if it scares you. Now, let's talk about the second monster. This one is even deadlier because it strikes fast. Lesson number 2, the sequence of returns risk. This is the silent killer of retirement portfolios. When you are working and saving, you are in the accumulation phase. In this phase, a stock market crash is actually good for you. It allows you to buy more shares at a discount. You want the market to crash when you are 30. But the day you retire, the math flips upside down. You enter the decumulation phase. In this phase, a market crash is a death sentence. Let me give you a tale of two retirees, Alice and Bob. They both retire with $1 million. They both withdraw $50,000 a year to live. And over a 20-year period, the market averages the exact same return, 8%. Alice retires during a bull market. In her first 3 years, the market goes up 20%, 10%, and 12%. Her portfolio grows. She is taking money out, but the growth is faster than her withdrawals. She ends up leaving millions to her children. Bob, on the other hand, is unlucky. He retires in a year like 2000. In his first 3 years, the market drops 15%, then another 10%, then stays flat. Bob still needs to eat, so he withdraws his $50,000. But now he is selling assets at the bottom. He is selling cheap shares to pay for electricity. He is eating his own seed corn because he depleted his portfolio early on. Even when the market booms later, he has no capital left to ride the wave up. Bob goes broke in 15 years. Same starting money, same average return, totally different lives. This is the cruelty of sequence of returns risk. The market does not care about your average return. It cares about when you get the return. If you get hit with a bear market in the first 5 years of your retirement, you are statistically likely to run out of money. So what is the solution? You cannot predict the market. I cannot predict the market. The solution is to build a cash moat. You need to have 2 to 3 years of living expenses sitting in cash or short-term bonds separate from your stocks. When the market crashes, you do not sell a single share. You live off your cash moat. You burn the furniture to keep warm so you don't have to sell the house. You wait for the market to recover. If you do not have this moat, you are naked in a storm. This brings us to the third mathematical trap. Lesson number 3, the 4% rule is dead. For decades, financial planners have told you just withdraw 4% of your portfolio every year, adjust for inflation, and you will never run out of money. This was based on a study by Bill Bengen in the 90s. It was a great rule for the 90s, but you have to look at the context. When that rule was created, bond yields were 5 or 6%. Stocks were reasonably valued. Today, we live in a world of lower projected returns and higher volatility. If you blindly follow the 4% rule in a high valuation environment, you have a significant chance of draining your portfolio by age 85. Rigidity is the enemy of survival. If the market drops 20% and you still insist on taking out your inflation-adjusted 4%, you are accelerating your own demise. You are digging the hole deeper. The new rule is not a fixed number. It is dynamic spending. You must be willing to act like a business. When revenue is down, you cut expenses. In a bad year, you don't take a vacation, you don't eat out. You might even have to cut your withdrawal to 3% or 2%. This requires a psychological shift. You cannot view your retirement income as a guaranteed paycheck. You must view it as a variable dividend. If you cannot accept the reality that your lifestyle must fluctuate with the economy, then you are not ready to retire. The market owes you nothing. It definitely does not owe you a steady paycheck. So to summarize this minefield, inflation is hunting you slowly. The market cycle is hunting you randomly. And your own rigid spending habits are the trap that locks you in. If you can survive these 3 monsters, you have a fighting chance. But we are not done yet. Now that we have discussed the math, we need to talk about the people. Because the next threat to your survival doesn't come from charts and graphs. It comes from the people smiling at you, shaking your hand, and calling you Dad or Grandpa. Welcome to part 3. If you survive the math, now you have to survive the people. The financial industry and your own social circle know one thing about you. You have a pile of money and you are getting older. To them, you are not a person. You are a revenue stream. You are a carcass waiting to be picked clean. This section is called the human predators. And I am going to warn you, the first predator on this list is going to break your heart. Lesson number 4, family is a liability. This is the hardest lesson to accept. You love your children. You love your grandchildren. You want to help them buy a house, pay for college, or start a business. But here's the brutal truth. Adult children are the #1 cause of bankruptcy for retirees. Thomas Stanley, in his book, The Millionaire Next Door, calls this economic outpatient care. It sounds like kindness, but it is actually a poison. When you give money to an able-bodied adult child, you are doing 2 things. First, you are weakening their ability to survive in the wild. You are turning them into financial invalids who depend on your life support. Second, and more importantly, you are puncturing your own life raft. You have to remember the physics of retirement we discussed in part 1. You are on a fixed survival mission. Every dollar you give away is a dollar of oxygen you will not have when you are 85 and sick. I have seen retirees give $50,000 to their son for a down payment, feeling proud. 10 years later, that son is divorced and lost the house, and the parents are eating cat food because they ran out of money. This is not generosity. It is financial suicide. You must adopt a new mantra. The bank of mom and dad is permanently closed. Your retirement funds are not a family trust. They are your survival kit. You must put on your own oxygen mask first. If you run out of money, who do you think will pay for your nursing home? That same son. Statistically unlikely. By refusing to give them money now, you are actually giving them the greatest gift of all. You are ensuring that you will never become a burden to them in your old age. Now let's move from the people you love to the people you pay. Lesson number 5, the friendly advisors. You walk into a nice office, there's mahogany furniture, free coffee, and a man in a sharp suit who smiles and calls you by your first name. He tells you he can beat the market. He tells you not to worry. He says his fee is only 1%. You think 1%? That's nothing. I keep 99%. This is the greatest magic trick Wall Street ever pulled. Let me explain the math of fees. If the stock market returns 7% a year and your advisor takes 1%, he is not taking 1% of your profit. He is taking 14% of your profit. Over a 30-year retirement, that little 1% fee will consume nearly 30% of your total wealth. Think about that. You take 100% of the risk. You provide 100% of the capital. Yet the advisor walks away with 30% of your nest egg, win or lose. I made a bet in 2007. I bet $1 million that a simple low-cost S&P 500 index fund would beat a group of high-priced hedge funds over 10 years. I won that bet easily. The hedge fund managers drove Ferraris, charged high fees, and delivered mediocre results. The index fund did nothing, charged almost nothing, and won. In retirement, you cannot afford to feed a leech. You do not need a complex portfolio. You do not need expensive active management. Complexity is just a mechanism to hide fees. If your advisor cannot explain why you are paying him in 2 sentences, fire him. Buy the index. Keep the 30% for yourself. Now, the final predator. This one hunts you when you are most vulnerable. Lesson number 6, the scam of guaranteed returns. As you age, a biological change happens. Your cognitive processing speed slows down, but your trust in others actually increases. This is a dangerous combination. Scammers know this. They know you are worried about your savings running out. They know you are desperate for yield because interest rates are low. So they offer you the magic words, guaranteed high returns. They will sell you unlisted REITs, complex annuities, crypto schemes, or special private equity deals. They will tell you it is safe. They will show you charts that only go up. Here's the rule. In finance, if someone offers you a return higher than the U.S. Treasury bond without risk, they are lying. Period. There is no such thing as a free lunch. If the yield is high, the risk is high. If they say there is no risk, the risk is that you lose everything. I have a protocol for you. It is called the 3-day third-party rule. If anyone, I don't care if it's your brother, your pastor, or your best friend, pitches you an investment, you are not allowed to say yes. You must say, I need 3 days. During those 3 days, you must take the proposal to a disinterested third party, a fee-only fiduciary, a skeptical lawyer, or just a friend who is good at math. You will be amazed at how quickly a scam falls apart when you step out of the emotional pressure cooker and let a cold pair of eyes look at the numbers. Protecting your perimeter is not just about locking your doors. It is about locking your wallet against guilt, against high fees, and against greed. Because once that money leaves your hands, it is gone forever. And in the ocean of retirement, you cannot swim back to get it. We now enter the 4th and perhaps the darkest chamber of retirement planning. We call this the existential crisis. You see, you can win the math game. You can fight off the scammers. You can say no to your children. But if you lose the battle within your own mind and body, none of that money matters. There is a grim statistic that actuaries know but rarely talk about. There is a spike in mortality rates in the first 2 years after retirement. Men in particular have a terrifying tendency to drop dead shortly after they stop working. Why? Because they prepared their bank accounts, but they did not prepare their souls. Lesson number 7. Health is the ultimate capital. People ask me, Warren, what is the best investment? They expect me to say Coca-Cola or Apple. The best investment is your own body, and in retirement, it is also your biggest potential liability. Charlie Munger used to tell a story to young people. He said, imagine that when you turn 16, a genie appears and gives you a car. It's a beautiful car, but there is a catch. This is the only car you will ever have for the rest of your life. If you knew that, how would you treat that car? You would read the manual 5 times. You would change the oil twice as often as necessary. If there was a scratch, you would fix it immediately. You would keep it in the garage. Most people treat their bodies like a rental car for 60 years. They abuse it. They ignore the maintenance light. And then when they retire, they are shocked when the engine blows up. Here is the brutal financial truth. In the United States, one major medical event can wipe out a lifetime of savings, even with insurance. The cost of long-term care, nursing homes, and specialized drugs is the inflation rate on steroids. If you are sitting on a pile of cash but you cannot walk up a flight of stairs, you are not rich. You are a poor man with money. Your job in retirement is to become the mechanic of your own vehicle. Spending money on a personal trainer, on high-quality food, and on preventative care is not spending. It is investing. It has a higher ROI than any stock I have ever bought. But the body is only half the battle. The mind is where the war is truly lost. Lesson number 8, the identity void. For 40 years, when someone asked you, who are you, you answered with your job title. I am an engineer. I am a teacher. I am a VP of sales. Your relevance, your social circle, and your sense of purpose were all tied to that business card. The day you retire, that card goes into the shredder, and suddenly you are nobody. This is what I call the identity void. You wake up on a Tuesday morning, you have nowhere to be, no one is calling you, no one needs you to solve a problem. At first it feels like freedom. You play golf, you watch Netflix, you sleep in. This lasts for about 6 months. We call this the sugar rush of retirement. But then the sugar crash hits. Boredom sets in. And boredom is not just annoying, it is lethal. I have seen brilliant CEOs retire and turn into vegetables within 2 years. They lost the friction of the world. They lost the challenge. Without a problem to solve, the human spirit begins to rot. Look at me. I am in my 90s. Charlie worked until he was 99. Do you think we do this for the money? We have enough money to buy a small country. We do it because work is not a chore. Work is engagement with life. The brutal lesson is this: a life of total leisure is a nightmare. You do not need to retire in the traditional sense. You need to pivot. You need to find a new mountain to climb. It doesn't have to be for money. It could be volunteering. It could be learning a complex instrument. It could be mentoring. But you must wake up every morning with a mission. If you do not have a purpose, you are just waiting to die. And nature has a cruel way of accelerating the process for things that serve no purpose. This brings us to the final internal threat. Lesson number 9, cognitive decline. The phrase use it or lose it applies to your muscles, but it applies double to your brain. There is a misconception that your brain is like a machine that wears out with use, so you should rest it in old age. That is dead wrong. The brain is like a muscle that atrophies with disuse. When you work, you are constantly solving complex problems. You are navigating social politics. You are learning new software. This keeps the neural pathways firing. When you retire and sit in front of the television for 6 hours a day, those pathways begin to dissolve. I spend 80% of my day reading. I read financial reports, newspapers, biographies. Charlie was a book with legs. We constantly challenged our own biases. Cognitive decline is the thief that steals your personality before it steals your life. And from a financial perspective, it is a disaster.
Research shows that financial literacy declines by about 1% per year after age 60. But confidence does not decline. So you have people who are getting less sharp, but they think they are just as smart as ever.
That is when the bad decisions happen. That is when the scams work. You must build a cognitive fortress. You must commit to lifelong learning. And I don't mean doing easy Sudoku puzzles. I mean learning something hard. Learn a new language. Learn bridge. It's a game of probabilities. Learn coding. Do things that make your brain hurt a little. That pain is the feeling of your brain staying alive. If you let your mind rust, you are betraying the greatest asset you possess. So protect the body, fill the void with purpose, and sharpen the mind every single day. Because the goal is not just to survive to 90. The goal is to be alive at 90. We have arrived at the final lesson, and this one is about the end game. Most people spend their retirement looking at the scoreboard trying to figure out how much money they have left, but they forget to ask the most important question. What is the money actually for? Lesson number 10, the legacy trap. There is a tragic phenomenon I see in wealthy retirees. I call it the Scrooge syndrome. They have $2 million in the bank. They are 75 years old, but they are still eating cold beans, refusing to turn up the heat in winter, and driving a car with broken windows. Why? Because they are terrified of running out, or they are obsessed with leaving a massive inheritance to their children. Here is the brutal truth. Being the richest person in the graveyard is a failure of planning. Money has a use-by date. The utility of a dollar changes as you age. The dollar spent at age 65 on a trip to Italy brings you immense joy and memories. That same dollar spent at age 95 when you are bedridden buys you nothing but a slightly better brand of catheter. If you save everything for the end, you are wasting the life energy stored in that money. And let us talk about the inheritance. I have said this many times. You should leave your children enough so they can do anything, but not enough so they can do nothing. If you live like a pauper to leave a mountain of cash to your children who are already in their 50s, you are not helping them. You are often ruining them. You are depriving yourself of dignity in your final years to fund their midlife crisis. The goal should not be to build a dynasty. The goal should be to die with zero, or at least close to it. This does not mean you are irresponsible. It means you calculate your survival needs, you build your safety margin, and then you spend the rest on living. Use your money to bring your family together while you are still alive. Pay for the family vacation. Buy the big dinner. Give with a warm hand, not a cold one. Do not let your money own you until your last breath. You earned it. You should be the one to deploy it. So here we are. We have traversed the ocean. We have looked the monsters in the eye. Let us review the 10 brutal lessons of the shadow code for retirees. We learned about the longevity risk and how you are living longer than you can afford. We learned about the inflation monster and how your personal inflation is higher than the official numbers. We learned about sequence of returns and how the market hates you if you retire at the wrong time. We learned that the 4% rule is dead and you need dynamic spending. We learned that family is a liability and you must close the bank of mom and dad. We learned about friendly advisors and how fees are the termites of your wealth. We learned about guaranteed returns and how, if it sounds too good to be true, it is a scam. We learned that health is capital and your body is your only vehicle. We learned about the identity void and how purpose is the only antidote to death. And finally, we learned about the legacy trap and why you should not die rich and live poor. These lessons are brutal. I know they are not what you wanted to hear. You wanted me to tell you that retirement is easy, but easy is a lie. The transition from a worker to a retiree is the most dangerous financial maneuver of your life. It requires you to change your entire operating system. You must go from being a passenger in the corporate ship to being the captain of your own lifeboat. You must stop seeking comfort and start seeking resilience. You must stop trusting blindly and start verifying. You must stop drifting and start steering. If you can master these 10 lessons, you will not just survive retirement, you will conquer it. You will be the rare person who ages with dignity, with security, with a smile that is real, not painted on for a brochure. Thanks for watching.